Hi, everyone. Today on the Fireside Podcast, I'm joined with a very special guest. We're joined by Michael Braithwaite, President and CEO of Jack.org. Michael, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me, Sean. I think I remember my teachers when I was young describing me as very special, but probably not in the same way as you're saying.
There's crossovers.
Special.
Yeah. Boy. Yeah, no, it's I'm so happy we got you on, and I really love what you're doing both as a cyclist and someone who really supports the messaging and the stuff that you're up to, supporting Canadians and young people with mental health in their journey. And it's a fantastic cause to rally behind, and a fantastic event as well. And there's no better way to get out and get some sunshine, support a great cause. And we'll talk about that during the podcast. But thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate it.
And great to be here.
So, just for our listeners who aren't familiar, kind of the story behind Jack.org, kind of Jack's story, his legacy, and how that sparked a national movement.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you hear of Jack.org, you're like, why Jack? Where does that figure into it? And the way it kind of rolled out in 2010, a young man named Jack Windeler, he came from a very tight family. He went to Ridley College, and he was an athlete there, and he was top marks, and he went to Queen's University. And it was then in his first year that mental health challenges presented themselves. And it was back in 2010, he didn't really know what to do. And Jack was kind of faced with, if I'm not an athlete, if I'm not a scholar, because it was affecting his grades, he couldn't show up how he used to show up.
Yeah.
He was used to showing up. Who am I? And I'm ashamed. And I can't tell anyone this because they know me, Jack, the athlete, Jack, and which isn't true. That's like in your own head, but that's what his thoughts were. And sadly, young Jack lost his life by suicide that year. And when his parents were called, Sandra and Eric, by the police to tell them of this tragedy, they were shocked to find out. They thought, it's so shocking. Was there an accident? What happened? And when they learned it was by suicide, they were more shocked as parents that how could we not know?
Yeah.
How could we not know? And often that's the case because he carried it. Now, some of his friends said, yeah, he wasn't showing up. It was different. We just didn't know what to do. We didn't know how to start that conversation. So in their grief, Eric, who was, a lifelong entrepreneur who had built businesses up, was like, where's the gap? In his grief, where was the gap for Jack? And is it a gap for others? So he spent a couple of years with Kids Helpful, volunteering, learning the system, and saw that there was a gap in early intervention and prevention where we're a system built on crisis, right? When you're in crisis, let's get you some support. And even that has its own challenges. But what if we thought differently and worked upstream and looked at early intervention prevention? Could we have many young people avoid crisis?
Yes.
And avoid more pressure on the system? And so Jack.org was born with that thought. And Eric always wanted it as the founder as by youth for youth. So everything we do at Jack.org is youth informed, right? So it's peer-to-peer kind of support. Because as I often say, Sean, that like if I get up and talk to a group of young people, all it is noise because I'm old. Right? Like they're whatever boomer, not a boomer, by the way, a Gen X. But anyway, so I mean, that's what they think. It's how can you possibly relate to me? How can I relate to you? But if a young person, one of their friends tells them the same thing, it's gold, right? Because we're going through the same thing. We're in the same place. You get me. So the importance of that peer-to-peer really stuck. And that's what kind of drives our work across the nation.
Yeah. And I think that's so important because if you're a young person and you're going through a mental health crisis, you don't necessarily have an understanding of truly what's going on. It's a confusing feeling and you don't know what the root cause of it is. And that could be a clearly defined condition, but at your stage in your journey, you don't know what that is. And it's just feeling off. So by getting in there early on, mental health, I think, is one of those things that develops over time, and getting in there early and teaching those right strategies early on is something that's super important to fostering, strong adults. Because young people, they'll grow up, and just making sure that they have those different strategies in place to help them is super important.
Yeah, you hear it all the time, right? People are like, I wish I knew that when I was younger.
Yeah. Yep.
Right.
Exactly.
Things would have been different. And that's kind of the idea is work further upstream.
Yeah, no, for sure. I was on your website and I saw impatient for change. And I really like that term because this is one of those topics where you need to bring it to the forefront because it's such an important topic and such an important conversation piece. I guess, what does impatient for change mean?
Well, just recently, there was some research out that showed poor mental health in Canada is costing us $180 billion a year. Right. And in the next 25 years, or next 15 years, maybe, if we don't do it, it'll be like 225 trillion, just astronomical cost on our system. So that impatient for change is that the need is growing rapid and the services to support that isn't growing as fast. So we're losing ground.
Hmm.
Right? So hence impatient for that change. We need it now. We need it today. We need to be innovative. And the change can't be, if you do what you did, you get what you got, right? So we have to change up and have that focus and put some resources in that early intervention prevention space, change our system from just crisis response to really from early on to that. All right, we're going to work with you on prevention, and then you might need some help beyond that. So we'll put you in touch with, say, a crisis line, and maybe beyond that, you might need some help with medications or different things to manage that, and then step by step, right? So just the continuum. But that continuum right now starts at crisis.
Yeah. And I think it's so important getting that messaging out like to young people like you're doing, because that is the initial start to the framework in understanding what's going on and fostering a good strategy and plan. People don't necessarily know what's going on, but being able to acknowledge it and then be able to build out a framework and an action plan to help them. Because I'm sure as a young person, it's a very intimidating thing to look at this and realize maybe there's something going on, but young people helping young people is something that's a really powerful, impactful thing and can help a lot of people just starting conversations and helping foster good community groups throughout the country of young people supporting each other. Your organization is student-led, youth-led. What does it really take for someone to become a member of your speaker group and to help coach them through that process?
So we try and keep kind of a roster of 100 what we call Jack speakers, and we add new people every year. And we pay these speakers and train these speakers and pay them for the training, as we should, to go and safely share their life experience, their lived experience with others, in the hopes that in showing vulnerability and sharing your story that people can relate to, more people will talk about that. And everything we do, I should say, Sean, is evidence and data informed, meaning that we know it works. We know that 6 out of 10 people after a Jack talk, is what we call them, are more likely to talk about their mental health needs if they arise, right? And so what we do with that when someone applies is we're looking for, number one, geographical, like all across Canada. Number two, diversity too, because mental health challenges look different in different places, right? If I'm Indigenous, if I'm a Black youth, if I come from the 2S LGBTQ plus community, if I have a disability, maybe, have an eating disorder, maybe I'm from a small town, so access to services looks different. So you want to have a variety of different speakers that speak to those challenges and have life experiences around those and how they push through and continue to work on it and do that. And what we do with speakers is they come in and over 2 days, they get really intense training so they can share their story in a very safe and effective way, right? Knowing boundaries, and they're trained to do that. And that is real skill. I think part of many of the speakers have said, part of my journey in working through my mental health challenges is when I speak about it, it helps. It helps with the healing. I'm saying it out loud and I know I'm helping others, and then it helps me in return.
I have always said that this stuff, it's like mold. It grows in the dark. When you get it out into the sunlight, that's when things start to get better. And it's an intimidating process to do that. But by bringing it into the light, it's not the boogeyman that you thought it was. And you're able to actually go through and start to figure out a plan. But that's so cool. And you know what? It takes such an amount of courage to do that as a student and to go and share your story, because like you mentioned, it's you're really putting yourself in a vulnerable situation. But by doing so, you're able to really inspire and support, like you said, the statistic, like the amount of people that come out after you're looking for help is great. It's takes the stigma away from the condition or from the conversation, which is really cool. I love that. That's really nice.
Young people often think, in all of us, when we're going through something, that we're in it alone.
Mhm.
This is just happening to me. Everyone else looks so happy because we see what we want to see on the surface, right? What's presented to us. And so mental health is often unseen. And I'll tell you from personal experience that people I know that have died by suicide, it seems to be a trend. And sadly, where I'm like, there's no way. Like they were the most popular person. Are you kidding? They were the life of the party.
Yeah.
That's what I saw, right? I had no idea how much they were hurting, right?
Yeah.
How much mental illness had, what they were hiding from, and it's stigmatized, right? And they lost their lives that way, right? So it's not always evident. It is that invisible condition that people don't see very often, right? And it's not only like, so what we do at Jack.org too is we have a small window when a young person or any person has the courage to say, I'm scared, I'm feeling really anxious, this black cloud is here, and they disclose and they're vulnerable. We have that window of how do you respond? And if you don't respond in the right way, they may never open up again.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So part of what we do is prepare people to have those conversations. And a few years back, young people were, well, how do I have that? I'm willing to do it. I just want to do it. I just have to know how. Right. And hence we developed for young people, this super cool online tool called the Be There Certificate. 3 hours you go on and it takes you through 5 very simple principles on how to start and have those conversations. How do you do it? So you say what you see, Sean, and you're not showing up how you usually show up.
Yeah.
And the reason I'm telling you this is because I care. I'm here to listen and stop talking. And then knowing my own boundaries, that if you disclose something that you need help with, that's a boundary. I'm not a doctor. We need you to talk to an adult or someone you trust, and let's get you the help you need. And so it really walks you through that. And it's very simplistic. It helps with those conversations. And the happy accident around the Be There certificate that 100,000 people have taken across Canada, around the world, is that growing that ecosystem of people to support, is that parents started taking it and saying,
Great.
I too want to learn how to have those conversations. Coaches of teams, because mental health plays a lot into sport and pressure. Managers now of young people 24 to 29 in the workforce. How do I have those conversations?
Mm-hmm.
Make healthier workforces, right?
Yep.
So it really is applicable across. But for parents, and we learned this recently, Sean, that we did some work with UNICEF. We surveyed 4,000 young people. It was interesting because if I asked you, like, who are the first informal supports that people go, my guess would not have been parents, because, no, kids wouldn't go to the parents, but they do, right? So 60% of young people will first go to a parent, friend, or partner for informal support.
Yeah.
It's how we react to that that's important. So for parents, and I'm 100% guilty of this with my own kids, they came to me, and when they were vulnerable, my first reaction was to try and fix them, go into fix it mode, fix the problem, do that. That's not what they needed. They just needed me to listen, right? And so, we could discuss that now that they're adults, but for parents, this gives them that comfort in, here's a way to have these healthy and safe conversations that hopefully they'll keep coming back to.
Yeah. There's a saying, you don't know what you don't know. And for parents, this is a vital thing where young people go through different challenges all the time. And I think fix it mode is natural for a parent. If you see your child in a situation where they need help, that's the first thing you want to do is step in there and try to help them. And I'm not a parent myself, but that's how I would imagine that would go. But it's making sure that you have the right tools in your toolkit so that when these conversations happen, you have the right resources and the right understanding to have a productive conversation. And really, like you said, to focus on listening, because that's the biggest piece of the whole puzzle is just talk less, listen more, and ask the right questions.
Well, I think as a parent, as a friend, it's very nerve-wracking stuff when your child discloses that I'm really anxious, or I'm self-harming, or I'm thinking of her.
Yep.
Oh my God, that's every parent's worst nightmare, right? So that's why you go in to fix it, to be able to take a breath and really listen and let them get it out and tell them that you're here for them, you're listening, and then trying to get them help. If beyond, because for some young people, this is the great thing. I come to you and we're buddies, and I just go and you say, and we have that talk, and that's all I needed. You're like, me too.
Yeah.
I get anxious sometimes too. I'm like, oh, I'm not alone.
Exactly.
That might be enough. And I'm
Yeah.
here if we want to chat. I'm always here for, okay, great. Me too. And that's the end. We don't go into crisis, right? So for many young people, that's it, right? Okay, that's enough. And for others, it will be ongoing support. And maybe there's a Jack chapter in your school, right? And there's hundreds of these across high schools and colleges and universities where we can open up the discussions around that and have summits around mental health and bring in speakers and kind of change the school's policy and work with the school on policies around that. Right? There's different ways to continue the conversation. We open up a lot of those for young people.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So I guess when you bring the conversation into the classroom for the first time, what's the reaction? If a school doesn't have a program like this, or maybe hasn't had a conversation like this before, it sounds like it's very positive, but I'd love to learn kind of from your experience from the ground level, like what does that feel like for the school, or what have you experienced?
I think that educators across the country are expected to be everything to everyone. It's a lot of pressure. We saw that during COVID when mental health challenges were growing rapidly due to isolation and fear and all the things happening, right? And this world right now that we're in, we're still seeing the effects of all the things happening in this world right around that. And where our kids, for a large chunk of their day, they're in schools. So I think the system welcomes this, led by young people, for young people in their schools, creating these spaces where we can have these conversations. And young people can actually lead the conversations. And let the schools know this is what we need, this is what we want. Every chapter looks a little bit different.
Hmm.
The job of our staff is to give them options. Here's kind of some parameters around what you should be doing and not doing. And here's some money to do that if you want to invite people in or do these special event days or whatever that is. We fundraise around that, right? So I think very welcome. And then people know that. I mean, that was one of our first forays into the space for chapters across. And now we do that. We've taken that chapters program. And now let's say you're in a community and it's a community center and they want to do something like that. We just call it the champions. So you can have a community group that does a similar space inside that space.
I think bringing in a group that is so specialized in what they do, like yourselves, especially talking about a conversation like mental health, you're able to bring more of a professional lens into it, or a lens that's, fueled by data and understanding, and really making a program and a conversation tailored for that specific topic. And like you said, teachers are expected to be everything under the sun, and bringing people in that understand what's going on a little bit more acutely and have been trained to have these types of conversations, and they're in it themselves. They're young people that have gone through mental health challenges and are able to relay that experience and take that stigma away from it by saying, hey, I'm also in the same boat as you. This is my story and this is how I dealt with it and how I'm dealing with it. And here are the right ways to bring this conversation into a productive direction and to better yourself, which is really, really nice. I like that. So the cycling event, how did that all come to be? What was the story behind that?
Well, I think the cycling event is what started Jack.org. Jack's father and mother are both very active people. They're cyclists. And after Jack passed, it was suggested that they do kind of a memorial ride for Jack. And so a handful of friends got together, no fundraising attached, and did a ride. And it grew. And someone said, hey, we should attach fundraising to this, or we should actually jump on this momentum and we could do more. And it built every year from there on. Right now, you're looking at 800 to 1,000 riders in Caledon on a Saturday in May. This year, May 23rd. And it's pretty cool to see. It's just grown and grown from there from, hey, let's just create some awareness and, Jack's legacy. And it's grown now to, an event that creates necessary dollars to do some great work around the prevention and early intervention of mental health across Canada.
Getting out on the bike, especially on a nice day with friends, you couldn't ask for a better experience. And to get so many people together, raise awareness, remember Jack, and really share his story and legacy with a wide group of people who love spending time outside and starting conversations that matter. Speaking of conversations that matter, it's really nice how you've turned the fundraiser into something that is able to be used to fuel conversations and support your organization through to the different, not hurdles maybe, but the different things that you need to do across the country to really bring these conversations to different areas that maybe don't have round the clock support, maybe in rural regions or areas where people are looking for this type of help but don't have direct access to it. Or like you mentioned before, it's access, but access at a critical point instead of bringing the access in before the critical point's reached, which I think is really tremendous that you do that as a team. I guess when you look at the difference between mental health awareness and mental health action, I guess the awareness piece is getting people understanding of what's going on or like what your organization does. And then the action is bringing that into practice and getting people into schools. When we look at Canada across other countries in the world, are there any other countries that are maybe doing things that we should look at doing? And just different programs that maybe you've seen in different areas in your travels that maybe stuck out to you?
Listen, I'm a firm believer in, what works in a different part of the world will most likely work here, right? The same kind of, it's always looking for best practices, what's different, what's new. And I'll say that if you look at kind of the World Happiness Index and some of the happiest countries in the world, sadly, Canadian young people are the unhappiest they've ever been. So where are the places they are happy? And those are usually country like Norway, Finland, Scandinavian countries that they're doing something right. And what is that, right? And that's a lot of heavy investment in social programs, continued investment over years through changes of government. But you mentioned too, it's a balance of stuff, right? Like, yes, you need investment in those early intervention prevention programs, crisis programs, connection to nature, the right medications, the right treatments. It's not a one size fits all kind of thing. So I think we can look to those Scandinavian countries to see what are they doing right and how can we follow some of that and change some of our system and what does that look like? But even other sectors as well, right? If you want to peel back the onion a little bit more, when I was in housing and homelessness in Australia, they were saying, well, what are the key indicators that lead someone into homelessness? And if we understood those indicators and could wrap services around them early enough, maybe people never drop out of school, which is a huge indicator. Maybe they never experience homelessness. Things like family breakdown, access to service, sorts of different things. So what they would do is called the Geelong Project. in Australia is they would survey these kids, and I think they were in like grade 7 or 8. And if they presented a lot of those, hey, this is someone you really need to watch because they have a lot of those predeterminants, they wrap services around them. And what they saw as a result is that school dropout rates went way down.
Really?
Homelessness went way down because you're just working further upstream, right
Yeah,
before it even happens. And my thought around that, and I talked with our team, and we're looking at could we do a similar thing with youth mental health, right? Young people's mental health. We look at those predeterminants. Well, they haven't. This person is perfect, is great right now, right? They're not having any mental health issues. Their mental wellness is great, but how do we keep it there? Because these are some predeterminants that are shown that they are set up to maybe have those in the future. So what can we do now so it doesn't happen? Right. So always looking at ways like that and being a little different, thinking a little different. I mean, at the end of the day, we really can't stop decrease the number of people in mental health crisis if we don't stop new people from going into crisis, right?
that's it. Yep, preventative mental health. And that's really, yeah, I can't say it enough. I really appreciate what you guys are doing, but getting ahead of the curve because it starts somewhere. And the earlier you're able to introduce intervention, it might not even feel like intervention because of the fact that it's just a conversation. It's just getting people aware of what's going on and knowing that they have the resources if something develops or if they're going through something themselves at that time. This is what I can do today in order to help myself for tomorrow.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
equity and access plays a huge part too, right? So it's not equal depending on where you live. I remember years ago, the head of the Canadian Medical Association said, I could tell your health by your postal code. And that's got to change, right? That's not right.
that's a very powerful statement. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Michael. I really appreciate it. If someone's listening to the podcast today and they're like, I want to get involved, I'm inspired, what do they do next?
Listen, we always are looking for people to be part of the solution, right? Come out to, if you're able to. I'm not sure when this podcast will actually air, Sean, but if it airs before May 23rd,
It will.
it will. Okay. So come out to listen, if you're in Caledon, come out to the ride. Here's the other thing too. There are like some awesome routes if you're a cyclist, but you don't have to be a cyclist. I am not. I could barely ride a bike. I'm going to do 10K, right? And if I raise $10,000, I will do 1K of that on a tricycle, right? Because we
Right
are,
on.
yeah, why not, right? Just to add a little element to it. I don't know if I can do it, but I'm going to give it a shot. I'm at 5,000 right now. But really, you could have said it earlier. It's not really about the bike. And we encourage people, and you don't even have to be there. So you sign up for Jack Ride anywhere you are in this country, just get in motion. You could go out, walks count, runs count, cycling counts. You could do it the day of or another day, raise some funds. And those funds go across the country for the work we do around youth mental health. But the day itself is not about a bike. It's not about a walk or run. It's about a day of hope and healing.
Mhm.
Healing in that you have 800 people. And what a feeling, the energy in the air that day of people that have been touched by mental illness, mental health aside, and everyone beside you on that bike has somehow been touched by this. And so it's a day of coming together to heal, but
Mhm.
also that powerful notion that 800 people care enough to come together and make that statement that we can and will do better. It is a day of hope for sure. And wherever you are in the country, you can get in motion in whatever way you want, in spin class or whatever you want to do. Get in motion, be part of the solution. That's what you could do. Now, aside from the day, if you want to help out, there's various ways, of course. Go to Jack.org, check out all our resources that you can share. If you have parents, if you have friends, and you're like, I don't know how to do this. I don't know what to do. My kid, I think I'm worried. Go to Jack.org, free resource, be their certificate. Take that, take it with your kids, right? And you walk away with a certification afterwards. It's really well done. It's interactive and cool. And you don't have to do it in one shot. You can come back to it, right? It's very simplistic. You can do that. If you're a young person listening and you want to open a chapter in your school, that's great. And as well, we're just opening up right now. Check out our website if you want to become a Jack speaker. That's for 18 to 25-year-olds. You want to learn how to share your story with others. And it doesn't have to be that you necessarily had mental health challenges, but it's someone in your orbit that did and how you work through that because mental health affects the whole family.
Mhm.
You could do that. And another way too, we of course have all your board of directors. We're always looking for people that love good governance, want to get involved with that. We also have something new called Friends of Jack as well. And that's kind of a think tank of people from all walks of life that 4 times a year we get together and we throw some of the big challenges that we're working through as an organization at them. And we try and solve it as a group and really use the brain power of that group who doesn't have 4 hours a year to get back, right? And so you're part of the Jack.org family working towards solutions around mental health. So lots of way to get back. I'm at Michael at Jack.org. If you have ideas, thoughts, you want to be part of the solution, reach out to me at any time.
Lovely. Well, Michael, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate the conversation, really enjoyed our conversation. And I'll be sure to include all of the links to your website, Instagram, social channels in the episode notes below. But thank you so much again for coming on. Really appreciate it.
A lovely conversation. Thank you so much for having me on and for kind of giving us this platform to talk about young people's mental health.
My pleasure. Thanks, Michael. Have a great day.